Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And then something happened. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Notice who the first captain here of Spaceship Earth is, found here in Isaiah chapter 14. The first captain of Spaceship Earth, according to the Bible, was the devil before he fell into sin. Now notice what it says here in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. The first captain of Spaceship Earth in Genesis 1:1 was the devil. It tells us that here in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? Why? For thou hast said. Now here's where the devil fell. You see, the devil, when he rebelled against God, was not in heaven. The devil wasn't in heaven where he rebelled against God. He was down here on the earth in Genesis 1:1. Notice what it says here in verse 13. What did the devil do when he rebelled? He said in verse 13, he says this, For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. What? Ascend into heaven? I thought he was in heaven. No, he wasn't in heaven. He was down here on the earth when he decided to rebel. I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt. Now watch this here. It says in verse 13, I will exalt my throne. Notice 1, the devil was down here on the earth. Notice 2, he had a throne down here on the earth. He was the captain. He was the captain. I will exalt my throne above the stars. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. And so we find here that the first captain of Spaceship Earth here was the devil. And then he rebelled. And then the Bible tells us because of that rebellion, it produced a terrible, terrible catastrophe found here in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 2. And notice what it says here in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 2. It says, And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Now notice that. Something happened here. Now you know, notice what it says here. It uses that expression, without form and void. In Hebrew, that expression there is chaos, disorder, and chaotic. And a lot of theology books put it that way. They talk about that chaos, the chaos here. And they talk about it being disorderly. And the devil here, what caused that chaos? Notice what it says here. It says, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Now I want to show you another point here. Whenever that there was, that the devil was down here with 1/3 of the angels. And we know that because it says this expression, without form and void, only appears 2 times in the Bible. It appears over here in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, and then it appears over here in Jeremiah. Turn over there to Jeremiah chapter 4. This is the only other time this expression, without form and void, appears. And it's mentioned over here in Jeremiah, which proves that the devil was down here in Genesis 1:1 with 1/4 of the angels, and they lived in cities. Notice what it says here in Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 24. Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 23, excuse me. It says this, And I beheld, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. I beheld, and lo, there was no man, and all the birds of heaven had fled. And he says here in verse 26, I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness. Now watch this. Verse 26. And all the cities thereof were broken down. You got that? Cities, verse 26, at the presence of the Lord. So it says here in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 2, it says, And the earth was without form and void. Now Adam hadn't been created, Eve hadn't been created, and yet in verse Jeremiah chapter 24 it says, And the cities thereof were broken down. There were cities on the earth before Adam and Eve were created, and that's where Satan and 1/3 of the angels lived. And that expression, without form and void, is only found 2 places. Now, it says here, without form and void. That's chaos. Now, where did this chaos come from? Well, it did not come from the Lord. The Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians chapter 14 and verse 33, it says that God is not the author of confusion or disorder. And in James chapter 3 and verse 16, it says that God is light, and in him is no darkness. Now, we notice 2 things here. 1, it's disorder or chaotic. That didn't come from God. 2, it says that God is light, and in him is no darkness. So what happened here? The suicide here, and because of the fall of the devil. And so here we have in the second phase of Spaceship Earth, the earth dies. I'll put a tombstone on it here. And the earth died, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Now notice here is the third phase of Spaceship Earth. Then the Lord came along, and He patched the thing up, and He renovated the thing. And the Bible tells us that God put another captain on Spaceship Earth, Captain Adam. You see, most people have, some of these unsaved people down at the university, they have the idea that Adam was kind of a caveman. Adam wasn't a caveman. Adam was probably one of the most intelligent first people, if not the most intelligent person that ever walked on the face of the earth. The Bible says there that God brought all the animals to Adam, and Adam gave names to them. Adam wasn't a caveman. He was a very, very intelligent being. And the Bible tells us there, it says in Psalm 8 and verse 5 and 8, it says that God crowned him. Got that? He has a crown. God crowned him with glory and honor. He's Captain Adam. It tells us in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26, it says, God said, thou shalt have dominion over the fowl of the air, over the beasts of the field, over the fish of the sea. So he had a domain and he had a crown. He was the captain. He was the captain. Then something terrible happened. The devil came down there and he had lost, the control of the ship. And so the Bible tells us there that the devil didn't like that. And so he come down and he messed up the first mate and tricked the captain into committing suicide. And what happened here is we have the first murder. The first murder here is Eve. The Bible tells us there in John chapter 8, it says that Satan was a liar from the beginning, abode not in the truth. Now watch this. He was a murderer from the beginning. A murderer. The devil was a murderer from the beginning. Why, who did the devil murder? Who did the devil ever murder? It says there he was a murderer from the beginning. And the Bible came there to Eve, and he said, all right, now Eve, you see that fruit? Said, that's good. Said, if you eat that, you become wise, and you become just like God. And so the devil talked her into eating it. Now what happened there? What do you think would happen if I went along here with some of these little kids? I said, and I took an apple and had poison, or got one of these poisonous fruits out here, and I said, here you are, kids. Take some of this fruit. It's good. Go ahead, eat it. You know what happened if they ate it? They put me in jail for murder, wouldn't they? Wouldn't they? If I talked them into eating poisonous fruit? That's what happened there. The Bible tells us, and then the captain here committed suicide. There are 7 people that committed suicide in the Bible. And here in Genesis chapter 3 is the only romance suicide. Romance suicide. I mean, you talk about, they talk about, Romeo and Juliet. Well, here we have Romeo and Juliet. Only we have Adam and Eve. And what happened is, it says here in 1 Timothy. In 1 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 14, it says, and Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was found in the transgression. Now, what does that mean? He saw that fruit. He said, you see that thing? It's poisonous. I'm not deceived. I know what's going on here. If I eat it, I'll die. But just like Romeo and Juliet, he deliberately took the thing and he ate it. And you know what happened? He died. He died. And we find here the first mate's murdered and the captain has committed suicide. And then the devil initiates another program, a satanic invasion, trying to destroy the seed of man so that the Messiah cannot be born in Genesis chapter 6. And the Bible tells us there because of this demon invasion, demonic invasion in Genesis chapter 6. Turn there very quickly to Genesis chapter 6. In Genesis chapter 6, it tells us why God killed the earth the second time and destroyed the earth in the flood. And what we have here is actually the death of the earth, a watery grave. And the earth is destroyed in the flood. Why? Why is the earth destroyed in the flood? Well, the earth is destroyed in the flood because of a demonic invasion here in Genesis chapter 6 that almost succeeded in eliminating the line of the Messiah so Christ could not come and redeem the human race. And notice what it says here in Genesis chapter 6. It says in Genesis chapter 6, talks about about this demonic invasion, it says this, and it came to pass when men began to multiply upon the face of the earth, that daughters were born unto them. It says here in verse 2, and the sons of God here in Genesis chapter 6 are the angels. In the Septuagint, which is the Greek, the Old Testament translated into Greek, they actually translate it los angelos, angelos. In Job chapter 38, turn over there to Job chapter 38. In Job chapter 38, it tells us there in Job chapter 38, I think it's verse 7. It says there in Job chapter 38, verse 7, it says, these are the angels. It says that when God laid the foundation of the earth, it says, the sons of God, the angels shouted for joy. Notice what it says here in Job chapter 38, verse 7. And when the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. That's not talking about Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve aren't even created yet. The human race did not even exist yet. The sons of God here, this expression, the sons of God, always, 100% of the time, in the Old Testament, refers to the angels there. Alright, and because of this terrible satanic invasion here, and this cohabitation with the human race, and trying to destroy the seed of man so the Messiah could not come, God sent the flood, and the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. And the Bible talks about this thing here, and the earth dies, the second death. Here's the second death of the earth. The earth dies the second time and goes to a watery grave, and all the animals and all the people are drowned out. And that's the fourth phase. And then the Bible says, and the wind, God caused the wind to blow upon the face of the earth, and here we are today. Here's the earth today. And as we mentioned, the earth today, in rebellion against Jesus Christ, travels around the sun at 66,600 miles an hour.